I'm not sure if that video was working in the end of that. It seemed to, when I was playing back, it didn't seem to get the work at the back. But yeah, I think whatever if the government is trying to accuse the bankers and the super rich of not helping disabled people, or creating politicians or a government that doesn't help disabled people, you know, by just owning a house, you have made disabled people very wealthy. Because if a disabled person was to inherit a house from a family member, if I, you know, my mum owns a house, so if I'm poor right now and I'm living in poverty right now, but I know if my parents die, I'm going to be inheriting a £1 million flat. Okay, it's going to be divided between me and my sister, but that's £500,000 each. You know, that is a massive difference. I will go from being extremely poor to being extremely wealthy just by one thing. Now, if the government is trying to make out that they're doing absolutely nothing to help disabled people, I think the government should actually take a note on how many disabled people there are who have become wealthy simply by inheriting a house or by owning a house. You know, maybe they did work, maybe they've paid for bills and stuff. And anyone who owns a house basically has become incredibly wealthy. And the whole of England is full of people who own properties. Now, I don't exactly know the statistics on how many people have owned properties and stuff, but I know that when I think of my sister's ex-husband, when I think of her mum, I didn't like her very much. We didn't really talk. I met her only a couple of times. I didn't like her. I thought she was a bit snobby, but I know she was claiming benefits, and she was sometimes couldn't walk. I couldn't really figure out like why. I didn't like being around her, to be honest. And when George cut all ties with us, you know, she wanted absolutely nothing to do with us, and just was very snobby. You know, thinking she's better. My mum is mad. She doesn't like mad people. She was always very, very rude to my mum. She wasn't rude to me, but I could see that, you know, I could see that she could be very rude. And yet, for some reason, the government has helped her a lot. Now, I don't know if she owns her house. I don't know the situation. I can't remember anything. But if she owned that house that she lived in, I find it incredibly unfair how she gets to live in a nice house. Where was this? In Hampton, near Hampton Court. It was a nice house in Hampton Court. I think I only visited it once or twice to pick Sophie up. But it was a lovely house. She's been claiming benefits all her life, even got a free mobility scooter to help her walk. I don't really know why she couldn't walk. I mean, she seemed like a 50-year-old who acted like an 80-year-old, but I don't know anything about her health conditions. To be honest, I really do generally believe that she would have had, if she hadn't have claimed benefits, I think she would have focused on trying to be strong and healthy and wise and look after herself and do this. But I think it's incredibly unfair. I don't know if she owned her. I believe she owned the flat. But I think it's incredibly unfair how, even if she didn't own the flat, whether she owned it or not, that's relevant. It's incredibly unfair how she got to live in a nice home, in a nice area, and she gets free money, free rent. If it is, I think it's highly likely. Her dad was a taxi driver. He earned money, so it's likely that he did have a mortgage. He did buy the house, and the property has increased in value. But I think it's incredibly unfair how the government or that woman could say how if the benefits were claimed that were cut, huge amounts of debt, I think it was 730,000 or something. 730,000 people would be in poverty, and the billionaires the government's only thinking about the billionaires and not about the people living in poverty. But I would actually argue that the billionaires are the ones that have fucked up this housing market so that houses are incredibly expensive. Now, do you know who that benefits? That benefits every single person who owns a house. And there are millions and millions of people who own a house and who have a disability. If you have a disability, your parents die, and then you inherit their house, wow, you're inheriting an incredibly expensive house. Now, you are incredibly rich because you own an expensive house. Now, if the only reason why this has happened is because the governments were helping the billionaires, and the billionaires were using their money to give to the banks to help loan out all these loans, these fake loans that people can't probably pay back, but it just end up becoming slaves. Yeah, they've turned the whole population into a bunch of slaves. But at the same time, they've also made the housing market incredibly high. Now, because of the housing market being incredibly high, people like my mum, who's as batty as hell, basically mentally ill because she's so mentally weird. But yeah, she gets to live in a nice flat in Hampstead. My my dad's autistic. Okay, that's another disabled. Now he also owns, but they both own together. And then I'm thinking of people like this woman who's my sister's ex-husband's mother. And I don't know if she owned it or not. Whether she's getting council to pay it all. I mean, that's incredibly unfair. How come these two people, and my sister as well, you know, even when she first started claiming benefits, she owned a £500,000 flat in the middle of London, and yet she was claiming disability benefits. So I know that if her claim had been rejected, she wouldn't have been in poverty. Why? She's got a millionaire boyfriend, or a boyfriend that owns a lot of money and owns this £500,000 flat and had a whole bunch of other investments and was doing banking and working with Deloitte. She was not going to live in poverty. Now, if my sister is an example of someone who is going to be living in poverty if they weren't given a disability allowance, then that is total nonsense. And now she's still got 2 properties. Okay, she had one when she first started claiming it, and okay, there was a time where she did own a property, but at the same time I think she was not really mentally there, so she deserved some sort of claim because of being not being able to really think about anything. I don't know, but she's managed to get her life back together again, and therefore her claim should stop. Now I'm just thinking of these 2 people who I know are claiming a disability benefit. I'm thinking, how many other people are there like this? How many other people are claiming disability benefit whilst living in a house that they didn't work for, they didn't pay for, they bought it really, really cheap because of the bankers and the billionaires that have all this money, that are loaning out billions of pounds, turning everyone into slaves, whilst also making a lot of money out of the people. The people are making lots of money by having the housing market so expensive. You're not just helping, you're not just helping the rich. You're helping everyone that owns a house that can now sell their property and downsize, and this is, I don't know, that woman was trying to claim that the government, that the billionaires aren't helping the disabled people, and I'm getting very, very angry about it. Why? Because I'm not disabled. I've had to move out of the city that I live in. I can't work. I have a huge amount of depression because of just how fucked up everyone is, and how people like this can't even see the truth, because disabled people are now living in £1 million homes. My mad mum is living in a £1 million flat. My autistic dad is living in a £1 million flat. There's a huge amount of mentally ill people that are living a nice, happy life with a nice house in Hampton Court or a place like that. The whole of London. I am so angry, because the whole of London is filled with lovely houses, lovely flats, lovely things. And okay, a lot of people are suffering, and a lot of people have to move out because they can't afford it. And then to think that disabled people don't have to do all the things that other people have to do just because the government there's people that are trying to claim that they aren't being helped. Some of them aren't. Some people, disabled people who are paying rent, who don't own a property, who haven't managed to become wealthy through the housing market being way higher than it should be, disabled person is such a bland title in these days, and it's annoying how people can just say disabled, and then you just think of the real disabled people, the really people that are living in poverty. Not everyone is disabled and living in poverty. There are many disabled people who own a house and who own an expensive house, and they get to live in an expensive house, have a nice life, a nice location, nice place. I don't like this location. I walk around at 4 o'clock. If I ever walk around at 4 o'clock, the whole area is full of Muslims and people that cover up. And I just want to ask them, why the hell are you doing this? Do you not think that it's an insult on the goddess to cover like that? Do you not think that you covering up like that is you saying, you know what, I don't want anything to do with the goddess because I think she should hide like me? That's to me what I am. And I have to live in an area where I'm seeing it all the time, because it's not a Muslim area, but there's a lot of Muslims. There's a lot of Muslims walking around in those horrible religious garments. I absolutely hate seeing it. I'm seeing it all the time. And then I'm just thinking of all the disabled people who have become incredibly wealthy because of these rich bankers that have just lent out billions of pounds so that the housing market is completely untouchable for me. And then I've got stupid people working in the government who are saying that these billionaires have done nothing to help the disabled people, when these disabled people are living much better lives than me. And this is incredibly insulting for me. It's incredibly insulting for the younger people who can't afford to buy a house and then have to spend all their money working just to pay off the rent. And then they find that they can't get benefits because they're not mentally ill or mentally disabled. So they have to move out of the country. They have to make the sacrifices. They have to live in extreme poverty because of the real problem, which is that the government is taking all their money away from them, even though they're paying all their money on rent. And then it's giving them to disabled people on the belief that all these disabled people are in one bracket. They're all mentally ill, they're all unable to walk, they've all got health problems, and they're all living in poverty and not going to be able to afford themselves. When I don't believe that's the truth, because I know for a fact that 2 people who are getting it would not be living in poverty if they weren't getting it, unless of course she doesn't own that house, in which case if she doesn't own the house she would have to move and go and live somewhere else. But why is that a problem? I had to move.